Gonna be working on a 2006 Infiniti FX45. We're going to be changing the timing valve solenoid. You actually get in the code for that, so the idle is actually idling a little bit higher than normal on the car, so I'll show you guys how to do it. When Nissan actually did this, it was a little bit, not even sure why they did it the way that it did, but you have to remove a lot of different things to actually get it. This process you can actually use on the FX45, the 2002 and higher Q45, or the M45. The solenoids are all set up the same, so I'll walk you guys through the process on how to remove and change this out. Okay. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do, we're going to remove this cover. I already broke the screws out of here. There are 4 10 bolts, which I already took out. This is what they look like, so I just left them to sit in there. So, alright, so first off, we remove this. Next up, we're going to remove the intake, part of the intake box. There are 2 clips that are in here, so you can either use the clip remover or you can use a flathead screwdriver. So in this case, I'll just begin to take these out. This one, and the other is over here. It's a little bit tricky, but there we go. So they're both out. Set them off to the side. Next off, you just wiggle this back. You actually have to slide it backwards and then up to get it out of the slot. Alright. So with that being said, so here are the sensors, if you can see straight in. This right here, actually let me get something to point to. One of the sensors is right here, and the other sensor is in the bottom over here. It's a little bit difficult to take these out, so for this particular process, you actually have, if you try to take the sensor out, it's going to hit against the housing for the water pump. So you actually have to take this whole block off to actually get it out. So before you get started, first thing you need to do is move some of this stuff out of the way to actually create yourself a little bit more space. So what I would recommend first is to unplug these sensors. This is the first sensor here. The sensor at the bottom. It'd be difficult for you to see the plug for the sensor. You can either leave it in until you take the whole thing out, or you can try to take it out. So I'm going to try to unplug it now, and then I'll move the harness out of the way to make life a little bit easier. So, alright, so I disconnected the sensor from the bottom. So just pull the harness out of the way, tuck it over here. Alright, so that's out of the way. Just going to make this a little bit easier. We're going to move the power steering bottle out of the way also, because the screws are for the whole complete housing are behind there, and some of them are over here. It's a little bit tricky, so if you can see them closely, this whole housing here, I know my hand is blocking it, but this whole housing has to come off in order to get that out. Again, they should have left this space open that you can just slide it straight out, so you don't have to take this whole thing out and replace it with silicone. You have to put it back on together with silicone, so it's a little bit of a process, but I'll show you guys how to take care of that. Alright, so there's a clip at the back of the power steering. So you just pull it, pull the unit up, and for safekeeping, I'll just tuck it in on the side over here to just get it out of the way. Okay, so now I think you can see a clearer view. So this is the housing that you actually have to take. This whole thing, this whole housing is what you have to take off. All right, so there are 1, 2, there's a screw at the bottom, 3, 4, and 5. There are 5 screws. You take those out, and we're going to take off this whole housing all in one. You can leave this sensor in here. It's really not going to do anything, so you can leave the sensor in. We have to take that whole thing off just to get that solenoid out. All right, so let's get started. These again are all 10s, so I'm going to be in the process of taking those all out. All right, so again, there are 5 10s that are on here. So I can just break the first one. One here. The other one is down in here. That's 2. I'll break these ones on this side. That one is right here. Break that one. Another one is over here on the side. Break that one. And there's one at the bottom. You have to use your fingers to find this one at the bottom, because you really can't see it. Okay, I'm on. And it's broken. Alright, so just needed to break them, and I can actually use this to wind them out. So I'll take these out, and then I'll show you actually how to remove this without actually breaking it. Alright, so I've removed the screws. Again, these are the 10 screws. I've taken them all out, as you can see. They're all removed. So in order to get this out now, you have to basically pry it out. So I'm going to use a huge pry bar. If you have a long screwdriver, you can use that. So basically what you're going to do is put it behind the sensor. If you can see, I'm sitting it on the sensor itself. This is the sensor right here. And you slowly got to rock it to break the silicone that it's on with. So just rock it slowly until you get some movement in the silicone. There you go. Come from. Alright, so the silicone is broken. It's still onto the pin on this side, so just rock it off. Got a little drippage of oil. So you can see some oil is running down. Pause it for a second. So I just dropped the rag in so I can just stop. Not much oil is going to drip, but I just saw that you don't have a lot of oil dripping on the engine. Alright, so this is the part in your hand, in my hand right now. This is the sensor. So basically, I actually, should have caught this oil. Me making a mess. So just get out the rest of the oil. So basically, what Nissan did, Infiniti did, this, when you try to take this screw out and you back it off, it'll hit against the housing of the water pump. So you have to take this whole thing out just to change the sensor. So before you go and before you're actually putting it back in, you have to clean up all of this silicone. Clean up the face also that has the silicone on it. And then re-silicone it. Excuse me. So I'll start to clean up the silicone on this. I'll take the sensor out. It's just a 10. Take the sensor out. I'll show you how to, you just twist it until it comes out. So I'll start the process on taking this out, and then I'll be right back. Alright, so just get a 10. You can simply hold this in your hand. Just break the nut. Take the 10 bolt out. Pause it for a second. Alright, so took the bolt out. You just gotta twist this a little, give it some play. There's a rubber, there's a gasket in here that keeps it in, so you have to play with it until you can get it pulled out. So this is the actual gasket that keeps it in. Don't worry about that. And again, once you replace it with the other one, you just start it in. So before I replace the other one, what I'm going to do is I'm going to clean up the silicone, get this all cleaned up, and then show you guys how to reinstall it. Okay. Alright, so I'm just going to clean up the silicone on this. Just get a razor. You need to get all the old silicone off so you got a nice clean surface to work with. It's going to take a little while, so I'll just clean this up and bring you guys back in once it's all cleaned up. All right, so I've cleaned up the inside. You should get a screwdriver because the silicone will be in this groove. You want to get all of that out so that the new silicone can go in here and make the rest of the gasket for you. All right, so then you just silicone around the outsides, and I'll put the silicone on this. But next stop, I have to go and clean off the silicone from the inside of the engine. Now all of this silicone I have to take off right around so that we can have a nice clean surface when we're putting it back together. So that's the next stop, to clean that up, and we'll be right back. All right, so what we've done here now is we've cleaned off the silicone, get a nice clean surface. So right now what I'm going to do is I'm going to silicone the piece back up. Bring the camera around here. It's all nice and cleaned up. New sensor is in, so I'm just going to bead this with silicone. Once I'm finished beading this, all we have to do again is just go back in and reline up. Get it back in. There's a dowel pin that's right here. There's a pin on the side here that you can, my finger is pointing to. I don't know if it's clear for you to see it, right? This thing I'm touching right here. That goes, you just, once you line this hole up onto the sensor, onto that, you'll be good. And you should be nice and even to drop right back on. All right? So let me get this all silicone up.
Go.
All right, so it's all siliconed up. Just want to get a nice even bead all the way around. Try not to have any breaks in the silicone. Let it sit for a second, and then we're gonna put it back on. All right, so there's now we're gonna reinstall it. So let's get in here. There's a dowel pin different on this side. The dowel pin on that one is actually under the block. So you try to line up this one first. Just get it under here. Try not to get the silicone to touch up against anything. I gotta turn. Oh, shit. Now that it is in, just start to catch the screws back, and basically you'll do the reverse. Just tighten back up everything. Basically that's all we're gonna do. I'll tighten this back up, and then we just plug back in the plugs. Alright, so we're just put back together. Silicone, as you can see, I catch the bolts back in, sensors in. So basically now it's just to reconnect. So first one I'll do is this one. Take the plug back into the sensor at the bottom. Switch around bottom here. Just come from this angle. It's kind of difficult to see where I'm plugging it in, but I'm plugging it to the back of the sensor down at the bottom. All right. What it was. I forgot to mention the code that I was getting. It was a P1140. It's the intake valve timing control sensor, bank number 1. So with that, my RPM needle was actually, your foot is on the brake and the car feel like if you actually have your foot on the gas, because even in park it was idling above 1, so it was about idling at about 1500 RPMs. So once everything is set, I'll clear the code, and we should be good to go.